And we are live. Hello, everyone. Episode 2. We have a new name, The Secret Sauce Sessions.
Love it.
Largely inspired by my very good friend here, Jacko, who still reps the wonderful drape on top.
Very proudly. Thank you.
The reason we chose the name, though, is because we've been friends for a very long time, and I was actually born a redhead, so I can technically claim that I once had red hair, and if I grow the beard out long enough, you'll see that there is tinges in there still. So there's some sort of Scotsman in me. I don't know how much, but we thought we'd run with it. And I think self-deprecating humor is too overlooked these days, and we're going to run with it and embrace it. But today we have a very, very big show. We're going to dive into the debate quite heavily, and I just wanted to preface things before we do with an amazing piece of content that Jack and I put together late last week and published 2 days ago now on Kamala Harris. And this was actually found by Saucy. He messaged me late last week saying, I found something quite interesting on Kamala Harris's Instagram. I'm going to link the little snippet to that here so that you can see it before I give a brief explanation. Come have a look at what I just found on Kamala Harris's Instagram. If you go through the people she follows, you'll find something very, very strange. Pretty much all of them are either actors, celebrities, athletes, or political figures. But then you'll find someone called John Doe. So I did some digging on John, and you're not going to believe what I found. We know Kamala's flip-flopped on policy, but let me tell you, Big Johnny makes it pretty clear what the agenda is. Besides the traceable donations to the Dems, let me lay out why I think he could be one of the puppet masters behind their agenda. He's on the board of a number of key companies, the first of which is Google, which we now know has been extremely active in censorship, most recently when they stifled the viewership of the attempted Trump assassination and only showed Kamala search results when you'd search for Trump. He was also an early investor in Twitter and very active in the decision-making during Jack Dorsey's ownership. He's a part of Bono's One Organisation, Bill Gates's The Pledge, but the most crazy involvement has to be Forward.us, which he co-founded alongside Zuckerberg. It's essentially aimed at fast-tracking citizenship for immigrants in the US, and some of the rhetoric is quite alarming. I mean, look at this. The reason I wanted to use this as a little symbol before we move into the contents of the debate itself is because I think it does a great job of personifying what the potential puppet masters actually are pushing for in the background. You know, this small video is on a guy named John Doe, who's a big donor to the Dems. He's involved at Google. He was involved at the original Twitter. He's got connections to some very, very interesting organizations around immigration. And, you know, we saw last night the complete gaslighting masterclass from Kamala on all the critical issues, particularly the immigration. Worth noting, she did do a pretty good job of reciting her prepared notes. But I just thought I'd preface things with that because we're going to reference that video a fair bit. The reception it's been getting has been amazing. It was a joint effort between myself and Jacko on the research front, and it's a piece of content we're just super proud of, and we're so glad it's being received well by the public. So, yeah, hopefully that gives you a bit more illumination into our perception of things over there in the States. So before we dive into today's show and the debate and everything, we've got a new segment, a fun segment. It's called Saucy's Sips. So Big Sauce over there is going to ask me a couple of questions. Now, unfortunately, because of my ailments last night, I'm not going to crack a beer this week. But in future weeks from here on out, this will be a beer cracking session.
It's also 9:30 a.m. on a Thursday, so
yeah,
not conducive to the beer drinking. But Nathan, let's get into Saucy's Sips.
Saucy Sips, episode 1.
I'm absolutely pumped for this. So for everyone listening, for all 14 of you, the whole premise, the whole premise is it's beer or no beer. So I'm gonna list 4 names, and Nathan has to tell us very quickly, instinctually, whether he'll have a beer or wouldn't have a beer with these people, and then explain in 20 seconds or less why he would or why he wouldn't. So, you understand, Nathan?
Oh, yeah, I'm on board, mate.
The first ever name in Saucy Sips is none other than Australian-American media tycoon Rupert Murdoch.
Yes, definitely would have a beer with Rupert. That's obvious. I would love to ask him some deep questions. It's one of those ones that you probably never really get the full story unless you spend a few hours with him. So a few hours of smacking some beers would be awesome. Particularly, I would love to know more about Kerry Packer and his jousts with Kerry Packer. I think just there could be something amazing there. So I don't know. We're never really going to get the full story unless this podcast blows up and we catch him before he carks it. But he's getting old, the old boy.
Yeah, he's in his 90s, but I'm sure he'd still drink you under the table, man. Anyway, let's move on. The next person on Saucy Sips. I'm just thinking of who I should. Okay, let's go for the potential next president of the United States, Kamala Harris.
Oh, no chance. You wouldn't, honestly, wouldn't find me dead anywhere near her. Well, maybe you would find me dead near her after that video we did.
And there are more to come. More to come, by the way.
Yeah,
more Kamala
no
stories.
Chance. Absolutely not.
Why not? I just quickly, is it personality?
It's just I can't stand. I just think fake people, disingenuous, completely corrupted. She's just a little puppet. No respect for her. Absolute scum in my mind.
Yep. I'm not gonna dispute that just yet. Moving swiftly along to the other presidential candidate, the most famous person in the world by quite some margin, I would argue. 45th and perhaps 47th president of the United States, Donald J. Trump.
Oh, 100%. Obvious, no-brainer.
Doesn't drink, but he could have a lemonade.
Well, he loves his Diet Coke. So I'd love to get out on the golf course. We're both, Jacko and I, big golfers. That would just be a dream. Funny, quick story. Shout out to Jack Bulfin if he's listening. Jack Bulfin, one of our friends who runs ADH TV in Sydney. And he's actually met the man. He had a great story. He met Donnie at Mar-a-Lago, I think it was last year sometime. Said he's a lovely guy. He had great stories to tell. Had lunch with him and his constituents at Mar-a-Lago. It was pretty cool to have a good chat with someone that we know who has spent time with him. I mean, the aura of the man and who he is and whatnot. It's pretty special. So I definitely would. I definitely would. Look, also on that, because people hammer me on Instagram. Oh, you're a massive Trump supporter, like you're Trump. Look, Trump's the best option for the USA right now, hands down. Okay, is he a perfect person? No. Has he made mistakes? Yes. Were all of his policies amazing when he was first in? No. Did he do a lot of good? He did do a lot of good. So let's just be clear on that. We're trying to be very impartial with where we steer, and I can tell you right now, if you haven't seen all my videos, you can also see that I have a very, very individual worldview that's kind of beyond specific leaders running the world. So just wanted to make that clear.
A rational perspective on Donald J. Trump. Wow, that's a bit of a game changer. All right, last one, Saucy Sips. You ready, Nathan?
Hit me.
Okay, she is an international superstar, and she has recently, in the last 24 hours, come out in support of her girl Kamala, T-Swizzle. Surely a drink with T-Swizzle.
26 hours ago, I would have loved to smack a cocktail with her, but I think she's fallen off the list now. Because to be fair,
surely you'd take her up on a drink. if Travis Kelce wasn't on
No,
the
because
picture.
she's now subscribed to the machine, mate. Like that was people go, oh, she made up her mind at the dying out. It's like, no, she didn't. This is everything's layered and calculated, just like Trumpy. Trumpy's about to bring out a big documentary on the immigration crisis to really drive it home. Well, our friend back in Sydney, Hamish, made a good point the other day of how Trumpy times his run. He's very good at the finishing stretch of his campaign and just pumps it home. They're doing similar things. That was definitely calculated. They knew, okay, we got this. We got. She's nailed the script at the debate. She's exceeded expectations. Now let's get arguably one of the most followed humans on planet Earth as a little ace up our sleeve to endorse our lady. And whether we pay her off or get her into, there's something there. It's not just a individualistic endorsement, although that's how it was framed. I don't buy that for a second. So look, prior to that, didn't mind a couple of her songs. Probably would have had a cocktail, but she falls off the list, mate. She doesn't cut the mustard now.
All right, so rounding out Saucy Sips episode 1. So what we're going to do, Natho, is we've got you, Rupert Murdoch, and Donald Trump together having a beer, which is honestly, I'm just picturing it now. It's a dangerous trio.
Tense room.
It's a tense room, and it's a very, very interesting trio. I'd love to be a fly on the wall, maybe a +1. But what are you ordering at the bar? Diet Coke for Donnie. What are you having, and what are you getting, Rupert?
Oh, I'd probably triple park myself. And then I'd get Rupert. I don't know. I mean, they're quite hostile towards one another. They don't like each other at all. So it'd be a tough one to mediate. Hence why I'd definitely triple park just to really calm myself down. And then Rupert, I might get him like a stiff scotch on the rocks or something, kick him off, because there's going to be some intense mediation to try and weather the storm.
It's interesting. I mean, that's fair. It's good tactics. I would have gone a Green Cooper's. Rupert's an Adelaide boy, and I reckon he'd love nothing more than a nice little lager to get him started. So anyway, that's Saucy Sips, episode 1.
That's a cracker.
Well done, Natho. More to come.
That was awesome. Awesome.
Excellent.
Oh, that was good, mate.
Moving swiftly along to the debate.
We'll dive in now with just initial reactions from Jacko, and we're just going to bounce off each other from there. So, Jacko, let me know now that the dust is semi-settled. What did you think of the debate last night? Hit me.
All right, Natho. As you said, a big one, lots to unpack. So let's get started. What do I think? Instinct, initial reactions. Yeah, as you said, a gaslighting masterclass from Kamala. Clear winner, I think, you've got to say. But a win without substance. A win with successful distraction tactics. And, I think, unfortunately, Trump slightly off his game. Kamala extremely well prepared. Her tactics worked masterfully, and I think ultimately it's going to be an annoying one for the American people, because I don't think they yet understand who the real Kamala is, as we'll dive into. I don't think she has any clear policy, despite her incredibly brash claims that I have a plan, which she repeated many, many times. She actually only came up with policy on her website the day before the debate, which says a lot. But yeah, look, you've got to give your hat a tip to Kamala if you're being fair. We'll talk about the moderators and the ABC, which was appalling. But yeah, you do have to give credit to Kamala. You have to say that Trump, I think in the second half, was actually quite good, but it wasn't his best debate performance. He wasn't as sharp as we've seen him previously. But they're my initial reactions, Nath, as we unpack a lot further. But one thing I want to get started on, one torch lighting kind of narrative I really want to unpack is the lies. So what you cannot say, having watched that debate, is that Trump was the only liar on that stage. Because the truth is that Kamala was far more inflammatory. She lied just as much, by my count, perhaps more than DJT. The Project 2025 response, which was her first, and she repeated it many times throughout the night, is utter bullshit. The audacity of her saying that he has no plan is laughable, because he's the one that's the most transparent president of all time. His plan is incredibly clear.
And it was pretty clear. Like, again, this is the gaslighting masterclass, and it was intentional. She was mirroring his plans at times. Yeah. It's like, oh yeah, well, he's getting a lot of popularity for, let's lower taxes. Let's make sure the tariffs are stronger if they want to devalue the US dollar. Let's sort out the border crisis. Like, it was to a naive viewer, which in all honesty would be the majority of people still watching ABC and all the traditional news networks.
Well said.
You would be very compelled to probably buy into what Kamala pitched. She was very well scripted, and that's a critical point. You touched on it. Like 100%, just from a psychological standpoint and observing the full 90 minutes, it was almost like when you're back in high school and you kind of knew the answers to exams, or you did a cheeky little cheat and you had the cheat sheet. And as soon as they asked the question, she was like, "Oh, I know the answer to this one." And you could tell in her rhetoric how planned a lot of those statements were. And she didn't actually ever really answer specifically some of the questions. Case in point was the first question, which I thought was a good one by, I think his name was Dan.
David Muir.
Dave.
Disaster.
He asked lots of concerns with the state of the country. Do you think the country is better off when you guys went into office, or do you think it's better off now? And explain. She didn't answer the question. It's pretty much a yes or no answer that you're required to give there, and then justification. She didn't do it. She had this elaborate response that wish-washed and basically gaslit the whole litany of problems that they've had the last, 3.5, 4 years. So I wanted to touch on that because I do think at the top of the show, they also said both candidates have not received the questions. This is a fully, it's like, if you're going to say that, clearly I'm not going to buy into it.
I love that they had to specify, knowing their reputation as the ABC, which, by the way, there was a great statistic that all the right-wing outlets published prior to the debate, and that was an analysis on the sentiment rating of favorability towards Kamala and Trump pre-debate, like in the election cycle. And it was 100% negative coverage of Trump, which, by the way, is astounding. That means that not one person has ever defended Trump on the ABC in the last 3 or 4 months, or said anything supportive or favorable, which means they are literally just a Democrat network. And then 93% favorable coverage for Kamala. So that's what you're dealing with here. And yeah, the fact that they had to specify that neither candidate had received questions prior to the debate, it is funny because it's an accurate state of where things are, and it's an accurate state of what an absolute disgrace that network is, along with many others, it has to be said. NBC, not much better. Oh. CNN, they actually conducted a good debate, but an appalling network. So, that's what we're dealing with here.
Yeah, and this is the alarming thing is just how calculated all this is. So I was, for the listeners, had a bad bout of sciatica last night. I actually had to go to hospital briefly to get some drugs because it was after hours to calm down my back. And I was sitting there in the waiting room, and the late Channel 9 news report came on. And basically, for US listeners or people around the world, it's just your typical stock standard news channel. It's not a conservative. We have Sky News here. That'd be the more conservative leaning news outlet. And it was startling to see the snippets that they've already prepared lambasting Trump. I mean, they intentionally, with the script, it's almost perfect. She was so good at baiting out those really crazy statements that Trump's renowned for, which are actually embedded in truth. The case in point, it was probably a 2-minute lambasting for him saying that people in Ohio, the Haitians and the Venezuelans had started killing and eating pets, which has kind of gone semi-viral now. It's gone very viral, actually, with her laughing and then saying, oh, geez, how stupid's this bloke? How out of line is he? And that was one of the fact checks. You mentioned the 100% 100% positive coverage on Kamala and 100% pretty much 100% negative coverage on Trump. They fact checked that. They fact checked multiple instances where Trump actually made truthful statements that protected the clear negligence from their policies and their malpractice.
Yeah,
that actually is happening. And for them to interject, that David guy from ABC, and go, oh, no, sorry. No, the law enforcement in Ohio have confirmed that is definitely not occurring. On to you, Kamala. I mean, these things are, if the general populace, the people that are naive sitting there in front of their vegetable box every night that still don't know what to do, actually knew that was unequivocal fact and it could have been referenced, that'd make a huge difference. It just completely exemplifies how poor this whole immigration shenanigan is. And yeah, they're really going to town. The snippets are starting to come out now, and it will affect the polls, and we'll get into what we think that all does now shortly. But I did want to point that out.
I want to expand on that, Natho, because I mean, look, I've got a lot to get off my chest here.
That's great. We're just going for it.
Yeah, no holds barred today. I want to touch on Springfield, Ohio.
Springfield,
Springfield, Ohio.
Yeah.
Springfield, Ohio is a town, obviously in the Midwest, population prior to this immigration debacle of 50,000, proud, mainly Republican residents. Okay. Kamala Harris' direct policy, which she has publicly spouted as she's been very proud of. She's been very proud of delivering this for the American people. Well, what's happened in Springfield, Ohio, is that at least 20,000, and it's rumored to be as high as 28 or 30,000, Haitians and Venezuelans have come into that town. That town is now extremely under-resourced for the locals. So the locals basically have lost jobs because the illegal immigrants have taken jobs on minimum pay. We're talking cashiers. The Haitian immigrants in particular have been responsible for a huge surge in crime. Safety in that town is now a disaster. And the problem with Springfield, Ohio, is it's a symbol for what Kamala's policy has done for the rest of the country. And yes, there have been multiple reports of pets being eaten. Now, whether that's true or not, it doesn't actually matter entirely, because
I saw the videos last night. I did some digging on it. I've actually seen on X now. I've fact checked. According to them, I mean, I have gone in now and looked, and there is multiple video pieces of evidence showing. I mean, there's this one video of a woman who's just killed a cat and is about to hoof into a cat, and this guy comes up and videos her and goes, "What the fuck are you doing?"
Hasn't just killed a cat, but this cat is like literally it's been almost split in half.
Oh, you've seen it as well.
Oh, it's disgusting.
Yeah,
and
but
frankly, look, for them to categorically rule that out, okay, fine. I don't actually mind, because it's not confirmed yet. I don't mind that they categorically ruled out that that's not happening, even though I think there's enough substance for Trump to say it. The problem, Natho, and this is a huge problem, the problem is that Kamala laughed at Trump's response, Trump's genuine concern about the town of Springfield, Ohio. She laughed in his face and said, "Talk about extreme," with that awful cackle. And And frankly, Kamala Harris, you are responsible for the fucking disaster that's happening in Springfield, Ohio. You are responsible for the disasters that are happening in Colorado and throughout the country. Crime is on the rise, despite you weaponizing the Justice Department to ensure that statistics aren't being inflated or actually accurately represented. So the fact that she can laugh in Trump's face and hide behind a real problem, and it's a disaster, not just a problem.
This is actually important. See, that articulation that you made there of the issue is probably some of the substance that Trump was lacking last night, that conviction in the numbers and the downright facts. The other, to that point, and the other fact check that he received was the crime rate increase and violence. Completely reneged it. He said, how do you argue with that? You know, there's more violence than ever. All this stuff is happening, and then he gets cut off and gets fact checked, saying, "Actually, no, we've checked with the county data, and violence is actually lower than ever." So, where do you pluck those numbers? And again, the problem I have with that is because these swing people or naive people or people that have been attached to the mainstream legacy media narrative for their whole lives. You know, our parents' generation. Probably arguably still the majority of the population, it's actually sinister and disgusting how malevolent they are in manipulating the narrative, because they did a fantastic job. Like, that was such a well-executed gaslighting exhibition. And yeah.
I was. And look, I think my hope is, Natho, and went on a bit of a rant before. There'll be a few more to come. And this is all pretty raw and fresh. It matters a lot, but it was 3v1. That was a 3v1 debate. The fact-checking apparently on the ABC, Kamala Harris saying, the Charlottesville comment from Trump, find people on both sides, which is an absolute rubbish story. It's been debunked more times than you can count. She spouted lies throughout. Dictator on day one, which was said as a sarcastic comment to get Drill Baby Drill over the line. The bloodbath comment, there'll be a bloodbath if I don't win the election, is incredibly irresponsible. She talks about being the candidate for unity, just like Biden did, which was absolute trash. She talks about being the candidate for unity, and yet, she's saying things that are patently untrue. Project 2025, which has absolutely nothing to do with Donald Trump and his agenda. So I think she's got to take accountability. And look, it's annoying we're talking about Trump post-debate, because I think it's incredible that the story isn't what a disaster the last 3.5 years have been. It's how she has spun this into, the fact that Trump was poor or below par, instead of her having no substance, is an amazing achievement. Because the truth is, she had no plan up until a day before the debate. She still is not committed to that plan. And I think that's a good segue into the piece we created, because Kamala Harris is everything that we hate about politicians. I think. I don't want to speak out of turn. I don't want to speak on your behalf, Natho, but
I completely agree, mate.
She is that political class. She is that regurgitating, well thought through lines that are going to poll well or distract the opponent. There's nothing authentic about Kamala Harris. There's no values or moral compass guiding her policy anymore. She is just a hell-bent politician, straight out of the Joe Biden playbook, really. And people are falling for it, and that's a pity.
And you're right. This is a good segue into the video. And look, the genesis of this video, for the people that have followed Cashew Nate for a while, or new to the ecosystem the last few weeks, because we've got a lot of new followers. More than probably 30% new followers the last few weeks, which is excellent. So welcome to the ecosystem for all the newcomers. It means a lot. But the reason we're steering towards this style of content is because we want to show the masses, and perhaps more importantly, these more quote unquote naive or ignorant or swing based viewers and voters, that there is a lot more behind the scenes than meets the eye. And John Doerr, that we dug into, that you would have seen the clip at the top of the show of, is a perfect example. Now, do I think he's the ultimate puppet master? Absolutely not. There's people up well above him that definitely control more of the narrative than him. But I definitely think he's one of the insurgents that have immense control. That he's more within arm's length, if you will, of his puppeteers. And it's very important to elucidate this, because you need to look at the bigger picture when you make a judgment on someone's narrative. And that's linking their rhetoric to, well, it's unpacking their rhetoric, whether it's real rhetoric or not, to the corporations that are interested, the people that are donors. Where does this all lie? And that's what I think we did a tremendous job of doing in that video. And by the way, there was, we could have done another 5. We could have done a documentary on him. We only picked the best parts. And when you look at someone like that, and then you have the clear realization that there's a lot more people at play. It's not just him. I mean, there's ultimate puppet masters that ultimately go all the way up this pyramid. I think I might just reference this pyramid. I'm not going to share my screen, but we'll integrate it into the show after. But this is a really good example. Actually, you know what? We'll just try to get this on the share.
It's worth getting up.
Yeah, this is good stuff. Hopefully I don't lag out like last week. Share screen. Here we go. Let me know when you can see, Jacko.
I have got it.
Beautiful. So I thought this is probably, I've seen this a few times on Twitter, but this is just such an awesome illustration of how the control pyramid works. And the more you start to get your head around this, the deeper you can go in your research and your understanding of the world, and ultimately formulating a worldview that you feel comfortable in. Now, Jacko and I don't agree on everything, and you'll probably start to see that come out over time as we do episodes. But one thing we do agree on is that governments are really quite low on the pyramid, and I think this does a great job of illustrating it. At the bottom, we've got our population and workers, which is down the bottom here. The lambs to the slaughter, so to speak. Above that, you've got all your enforcement: military, police, courts, prisons, the intelligence agencies, governments, religion, some corporations, and schools. But as we start to go up, this is where we can find these John Doerr-like characters. And I don't think he's near the top of the pyramid, but he's certainly up there. This guy has got links to all the necessary corporations, which we've elucidated in that video. Your Googles, your Twitters for censorship, your charitable organizations which say immigration's a good thing for America. Look,
illegal immigration is a good thing for America.
Well, yeah, sorry, legal in quotations, illegal as we point out there. You've got your oil companies, which obviously run the energy grid. But then above that, we've got the banks. And as you go up this pyramid, it's important to know that when you formulate your worldview on these things, you can't just look at one pillar. People constantly look at one pillar. And by pillar, I mean government. What's the government doing? What's this person doing? Well, hang on. You then need to actually stitch it together with what are the corporations involved doing. So, okay, we stitched Google. We stitched Twitter. We stitched the charitable forward.us organization in. Above that, you then need to understand what banks are doing. And a big part of this show, and later in the show, we'll go into it a bit more. The banks actually like to stay completely separate from this. You don't ever hear of banks being stitched to politics or banks endorse, there are bankers that endorse politicians, but they're quite removed with their fiscal policy. Once you start to get up to the top of the pyramid, you realize there's organizations, the Committee of 300, there's a few other organizations we can talk about another time. The WEF would be one of them as well, the World Economic Forum. These types are the ones that are steering the general direction. And in collaboration with these sub-layers down below, that's where the narratives are built. So to me, it's very clear that the democratic agenda, which as we know is not at all democratic, is very, very stitched to this new world order concept. Project 2030, if you've heard of that, Bill Gates is a part of it. You'll have digital IDs, you'll have universal basic income when AI comes out, you'll eat bloody his insect cereal, like all this crazy stuff. Not saying all of it's true, but there's certainly a broader agenda at play to completely demoralize and destroy the middle class and completely crush their spirit through inflation and cost of living. Get them to a point where the only thing they want is to be controlled by the powers that be. Yes, you get your UBI. Yes, you get your carbon credits. That's the other thing. Why is the another thing, John Doerr, which we didn't mention, he gave $1.1 billion to Stanford to do climate change research. The climate change narrative is a complete falsehood. And that's something I was disappointed in Trump not hammering down on last night as well. He should have stuck to his guns because it is a falsehood. They're doing this to roll out carbon credits. They already have done it for corporations. They'll do it at an individual level very soon. Their vision is for you in 5-10 years' time when everything's tokenized, is that when you get your tokenized central bank digital currency and cash is gone, if it all happens, by the way, I think there'll be resistance, that if you burn through too much CO2 and you have your aircon on too long on a summer's day, well, we're going to deduct that from your next UBI allotment because you've burnt through your carbon credits. This is the level of control on the world that they're steering us to. And look, I've just gone ad lib there and tried to stitch some of these layers together. But that's the way I think, and that's what we're combating. And it's imperative that people start to get their head around this notion, because there is many, many, many layers to this game.
Exactly, Nathan. People need to. I want to bring up one comment you made on the climate change narrative, just to get the record straight there. But people need to understand the forces that are at play. Kamala Harris is not someone that is in a position to just simply, this is how I think the world should be, I'm going to enforce that. I'd be very worried if that actually did transpire, because I think the way she would want the world is it would be a pretty scary world. But no, Kamala Harris and the Democrat Party, any candidate they put out, they are control. They are. There's no doubt they are influenced. I won't say controlled, but they are heavily influenced by a series of, as Nathan alluded to, people, very, very influential corporations, and layers that we really don't see just as citizens of the world. But there's no doubt that there are people that have Kamala's ear, and they have genuine voice on the big tables. But one comment on the climate change narrative, I think we accept that climate change is real and something to get on top of. But I think what you're referring to, Natho, is alarmism and catastrophizing the issue.
Yeah, let me specify. I'll just quickly clarify when I say that. It's the narrative. So the narrative used to be global warming. It used to actually be global cooling back in the early 1900s. So they've gone from global cooling to global warming, the Al Gore era, to climate change. Now, do I condone mass deforestation? No. Do I like seeing all these natural habitats in rainforests destroyed for lithium mines and nickel mines? No, that's disgusting. I'm a massive advocate, if any. I mean, look at some of my old videos that I've done on hidden technologies that are suppressed. I firmly believe that we could be living off at least nuclear power, but 100% 0-point energy power by now, or hydrogen cars. I mean, there's already hydrogen cars in production that they keep suppressing, or water cars. So I'm more against the concept of alarmism, as you touched on, and saying that, well, according to the Al Gore catastrophizers, the world should have ended by now. So I'm not saying that we aren't damaging the world, but I'm not prescribing to the fact that we, as a populace on planet Earth, are increasing the temperatures to sort of levels that are going to end the world. I don't see enough evidence there for me to believe that. A mass CO2 emission is bad, yes, but there's also an argument, if you do your research, to show that the amount of trees on Earth can process more than 10 times the amount of CO2 that we emit. So there's counter arguments to everything, but I did want to make that clear.
I'm not
anti-environmentalist. If anyone, that's the beauty of this show, is what I say. If someone puts it out of context at any time, I've got a truck ton of videos in catalog of me talking about quite the opposite, just how much I do care about the environment and solutions that have been suppressed from us.
Yeah, and look, I think the main point that you were saying with that share screen is there's just, and this is my pet peeve, as I'm sure anyone that listens to this will begin to understand, is the woke agenda. Because in my opinion, all the woke stuff, and by the way, let's define woke. I hate it when the far left say, oh, you can't define what woke even is. All right, well, let's have a quick crack at it then. Woke is nonsensical, illogical, social justice prioritization, often in the absence of common sense and rational thinking. There you go. I mean, that's ad-lib the best I can do with a quick little definition. But what they do with the woke stuff is they hammer it down your throat because, again, it's a control game. And a lot of it doesn't make sense, but it's a control game. And, you know, I think the really sad thing about living in the Western world at the moment is just how many, and look, you know, I live in the center of Sydney, right? You're up in the northern New South Wales. I think there are more independent thinkers, Nathan, where you are. But yeah, certainly in cities, and I go to dinner tables where, you know, there'll just be acceptance of what's being spewed by governments, and, you know, governments are influenced by
conditioning.
All sorts. Yeah, so it's sad, and it's being eaten up, I think, is the problem. And so, you know, I think part of the ambition of what we're doing, and certainly something that you've already had considerable influence with, is just teaching people to think more independently. You might disagree with where we land, and that's terrific. If you land somewhere that you've gone ahead, done your own research, and thought really hard about a position, and you come out on the other side, good on you. Like, that's great, and from there you can have a civil, respectful argument. But the people that are really dangerous in this society are the ones that are brainwashed, and the ones that are just completely controlled, who will not even have a conversation with you. They'll just refute anything you say on the basis that you've thought independently and disagree with what's being, with what's being kind of shoved down your throat by all sorts of parties at play here. So anyway, look, I think that's going to be a big theme of the show. But should we have any final thoughts, Nathan, on the debate?
I think we'll move on. Look, guys, we're going to jump into the market segment of today's show. Basically, break down what we think it all means, no matter who wins. And I'll preface things with this little graph here because I think it's a great illustration of prior election cycles and what it's done to the Bitcoin price and basically the broader market themes, the S&P 500, the Dow Jones, et cetera, et cetera. So I, high level, think that long term, Donald's definitely going to be better for the stock market and the economy in general. However, short term, and this is sort of similar to what I was talking about last week, and I love this chart for this because no one wants to look bad going into their term. And I sense this is what this illustrates quite nicely. Again, there's no coincidences in anything. The Fed are about to cut rates in September, or it's very likely, and then they're probably going to follow up with another rate cut at their next meeting in a couple of months. Once this liquidity comes back in, they start printing more money. They're going to prop up the economy to show strength leading into the election. They need the dollar to look strong because behind closed doors, it is waning in value with all the gold accumulation going on in China, Russia, all these other countries increasing their gold reserves, potentially to move to sort of a more gold-based standard, which is something Trump's actually spoken about and hasn't been active since, if I'm correct, the Reagan era. I want to be right on that. I think I am. It's either Reagan or I think it's Reagan. Reagan ended it, but it was prior to that. Bitcoin, digital gold, so to speak, blah, blah, blah. But this is a quite a nice illustration. I think, in my opinion, in the short term, certainly till end of Q1 next year, I'm now even more optimistic that this economy is going to be propped up, even if Kamala surges and wins, which is not what we want. But from a market perspective and from a money-making standpoint, you need to be aware of that because either party's not going to want this they don't want their launch into their campaign and into early next year to be bad. However, my view on the mid to late next year is very up in the air. I think there is a broader agenda at play, but Donald's going to be much more hell-bent on showing a stronger economy than they are. They'll probably be more inclined to tear down and bring in this new financial system that we'll start to talk more about in the near future. But with the CBDCs and the digital IDs and all that sort of stuff. So that's my synopsis on the short to medium term outcomes of the upcoming election. And by the way, I'd also like to stitch into that real briefly that you're probably sitting there at times going, why does Jacko and Nath just bang on about the US? Well, you've got to get past the point that the US doesn't matter in Australia. We're little brothers. We're carbon copies. We're going to follow with rate cuts at the same time. Everything's connected. So just bear that in mind. You need to follow the Mac Daddies because it all trickles down from there. So that's my sentiments for the short and medium term. If we're looking specifically at how the election could pan out and influence things, Jacko, I'll pass it over to you now.
Yeah, well, first of all, I think that's a really important graph, and I think your sentiment is accurate. No president, no administration wants to start off on weak footing. They will do all they can to prop up the metrics, and I don't say that with bitterness. If Kamala Harris wins, as is her right, she should be trying to make the numbers look good, even if that means some band-aid policy to get there. But ultimately, yeah, I think that again, neither candidate is necessarily bad as a short-term Bitcoin play. I think inflation hedge again points to Bitcoin exposure being quite healthy. Nothing major, but a little bit of Bitcoin exposure. That graph points to, by the way, post-US presidential election, in the last 4 cycles, there has been very, very positive short-term boost for Bitcoin, which is a pattern that I think odds on will repeat itself after this election on November 5th. So yes, I think Bitcoin, again, given the metrics, given inflation, given the cuts, it all points to Bitcoin being quite a sensible play. But gold, certainly. If Kamala Harris, I think, wins the election. Look, one other thing from the debate, which will become very telling if she does win the election, is there is no plan to curb inflation. Fundamentally, there is no concrete plan that she has laid out that will curb inflation. And the long-term effects of inflation, as many people know, is an absolute economy buster, I think was Trump's quote, and it's the right quote, because if inflation persists, then working class, middle class households ultimately can't sustain themselves. And if working class, middle class households can't sustain themselves, can't buy groceries, can't pay rent, clearly the impacts, if you're going deep and dark, the impacts are, well, homelessness increases. Clearly, unemployment skyrockets. And when homelessness and unemployment skyrockets, crime rises. When crime rises, there's more chaos, less stability. So you've got to follow those patterns. I don't see Kamala Harris being able to curb inflation. If she comes up with something good, thank God. But yeah, so that's my view on Kamala winning. And
I might just whilst it's fresh in my mind,
sure.
I forgot a point earlier before you jump into Donny. And I'd like to propose this to the audience to do some reading on it, because this is the fascinating thing about the crypto space and where we're heading with tokenized assets. And the main leaders in this are your XRPs, your XLMs, HBAR, and a few others. A solution for inflation, and this is not out of the realms of possibility. Tony said we'll use Bitcoin to basically obliterate some of our debt. I don't think that will happen, because the technology doesn't really work like that. Whereas XRP is unbelievable, that you can peg assets or debt to the tokens. So what I mean by that is there is a world where if they wanted to, they could basically peg trillions of dollars of debt into the XRP token ecosystem in conjunction with assets, in conjunction with liquidity provision between institutions around the world. What that does ultimately is drive up the price of the token to very, very handsome numbers. At that point, if you've got, I think it's over $10 trillion on the actual ledger itself, then you're already looking at towards $100 XRP. If you've got tens and tens of trillions, which is also very popular, the price responds in kind. And this is where it gets really cool, because that debt that's pegged to the tokens at that juncture, when the price is now up here and they pegged it here, you can liquidate into the market for other institutions to buy up. Retail by that point probably wouldn't be interested or be able to afford it, which then in turn cancels out your debt. It's a genius formula, because it's like an ultimate hack. Now, this is again not very well talked about. You got a deep dive, but it is a potential solution to solving this debt crisis, which the US need to do, because their dollar value is declining, and as you said, inflation is rife. They need to move to something that's more effectively backed. And on that, they've already backed now, came out about a month ago, US Treasury bills, which is the foundation for all currency printing. They have now pegged it with Ripple's technology to XRP. They're already testing it now. They signed a deal with the US Treasury. So this will likely happen. I don't know how it'll pan out, how much debt will get obliterated, or what the balance is between debt to assets, but that's the world we're heading towards. And as you go into your Donald Trump landscape thesis, I think that is a much more likely happening, or much more likely to happen under a Trump regime, where they can actually use this technology for good, because that is a good scenario versus the more, communist agenda of rolling this type of technology out to tokenize your ID. tokenize your healthcare, tokenize your house, tokenize your car, tokenize your carbon credits, which can also be done. So just wanted to preface that. Sorry for interjecting that, Jacko, but I did want to get that off my chest last week, and I thought it was a good time to put it in there.
No, it's a good point, Nathan. I've probably, as you know, and you know, by the sounds of the start of this segment, I'm sure people will think, oh, a couple of crypto bros, you know, spouting crypto as the future and rockets. It's really not where we're at. But I do think, again, if we're going to talk about Trump and Trump's effects on the economy, the Trump-Vance ticket is the most pro-crypto presidential ticket, clearly, in the history of probably politics, apart from, you know, maybe the El Salvador president, who is an absolute Bitcoin fiend. But really, yes, the US will be buying significant amounts of Bitcoin if Trump prevails. I do think, by the way, you know, getting off Bitcoin for a second, because I think it's easy to speculate that under Trump and Vance, Bitcoin would flourish. Cryptocurrency would probably, at least the tokens with utility, as you mentioned, XRP being one of those, there would be opportunities for these types of assets to thrive. But certainly, I think the major economic metrics under a Trump-Vance ticket, I think tariffs will actually work out quite nicely. I think, again, I don't understand why, particularly countries like, we're both Aussie, clearly, I don't understand why countries like Australia and our politicians and our public are so hell-bent on demonizing these tariffs that Trump has suggested implementing. A strong US economy has always proven, or almost always proven, to benefit any global markets. That's a fact.
100%.
So you need the American middle class, you need the American working class to be prosperous. That is always a priority. And again, rightly or wrongly, you might have a view on whether that's good or bad for the world, but if you care about your back pocket, then you want a strong America and you want a stable America. And I do think there is one party with a very, very clear policy on getting America to that position, and that party is not the Harris-Walz ticket. So, yeah, I think if you want stocks exposure, you know, then clearly I think you're looking at a Trump win. I think if you want that 2-3% Bitcoin portfolio exposure, you're definitely looking at a Trump win. I think if Harris wins, I think that's where you have to look at alternative assets. I think gold becomes quite interesting. If you believe, like me, that inflation will persist, then gold is obviously an interesting bet. But you probably want to keep a fair bit of cash at your disposal, would be my guess. And yeah, it's a bit of a doom and gloom prediction. I don't think you can be optimistic about what a Harris administration would do for the economy, given there's no clear direction, given there's actually no agenda to curb what is currently a one-way ticket to economic disaster.
Yeah, and that's the more, well, medium to long, I'm talking late next year, is what all the pundits that I listen to are saying is the so-called flip of the switch moment, where the new financial system comes in. And look, I think it comes in regardless of who's in power, because the US is one country. The BRICS nations is just gaining more and more and more power. You had Turkey join last week, or wanting to join. These guys are leading the charge in using digital currencies and CBDCs to move their economy and their wealth around. Russia's already bypassing tariffs by doing that. Like, they're leading the charge. The US are going to have to follow. And that's why things are accelerating so quickly. You've got JP Morgan, Bank of America, pretty much saying now that they've got XRP built into their systems, or RippleNet's technology. It's really down to, will this be used malevolently under, I think, a Democratic, the Democratic Party regime, or will it be molded benevolently and power to the people under a different administration, because one way or another, we are heading there because there's too much friction. We've got the inflation we just touched on. We've got the speed of moving money is too slow. We're on a 1960s system in SWIFT. Everything's coming to a head with regulations coming in, regulatory approval set actually for CBDCs to be later this year. Australia, I did a little video on that a couple of weeks back. They've updated the ATO website to rigorously outline all the taxation events involved in crypto trading, automated market making, transferring one coin to another coin, all these meticulously laid out taxable events. So the narrative is coming to a head. There will be a shift where they can't do it anymore. You know, you're right. The economy is heading, it's going down one way. And we're here in Australia, it's the same thing. Look at us. Like, we've got an employee here at Cashew, shout out to Cashew Sam, who's over in the States in Florida. We are effectively, obviously our dollar values are different. We're buying, I think, like around 70 cents, whatever, depending on the day, of US $1. Very similar cost of living expenses. We're talking rent, food, utilities, whatever it may be. Very, very difficult unless you're, well into the six-figure salary to survive. And I don't think that's going to change. It's just going to keep going. The squeeze is going to keep going. And then that's where we hope that a benevolent force comes in and actually ushers this new technology in to allow it to be easier for us to have purchasing power, to make living easier. Or it could go the completely other way. So this is why I talk about hedging your bets, because that technology will be used either for good or for evil. It's just a matter of time.
Well summarized, Natho. And again, I'm clearly not well versed on XRP and Ripple's technology. Something I might look into. But I think ultimately, just to summarize, I do think, and also coming back to the debate, I do think there is a very clear choice. And actually, I looked at a CNN poll this morning, which asked Americans who they trusted on the economy prior to the debate. And it was something like 55% trusted Trump and 43% trusted Kamala. I might have been 45% trusted Kamala. Anyway, let's call it 55, 45. Well, actually, post-debate, funnily enough, Trump surged ahead on trust in the economy. So
wow,
that's good to know. I think that American people, even though the debate probably didn't go Trump's way, I do think he got the economy point over the line quite strongly, and I do think Kamala's lack of substance in that regard was evident. So yeah, I think at the moment, the way it stands with the lack of policy from the Democrats, you've got to think that we're in a little bit of trouble if she does prevail. But anyway, that's the position we're in. There's 50 odd days till the election, so a lot can happen. But I think one thing I wanted to talk about, Natho, which is a quirky one.
Yeah.
I had an idea the other day. I was driving down quite a lovely street in Sydney, and I saw 3 number plates, all with either 2-digit or 3-digit number plates, numbers. 181, New South Wales number plate.
You do have a fascination with number plates.
I have.
I'll pop up on screen for our viewers. I did a video for Jacko a few months back on the most expensive number plates in Australia, so check that one out here before he dives into his little fetish for number plates.
Here's my crazy idea. And by the way, there's clearly no IP protection. Anyone is welcome to take this idea and run with it. And I would love to see it happen. Just tap me on the shoulder, ping me an email, because I might invest in it. But my idea is, I think if you started a number plate fund whereby you literally called up or got in contact with the plate holders for single-digit, double-digit, triple-digit number plates, which are all heritage plates, which are more valuable, in cities or states globally, but states that, are quite wealthy, prosperous places where ego is a major factor. Sydney, the international audience might not understand, but is probably one of the top ego capitals of the world, as Nathan and I are well aware of. But number plate price growth
That's an awesome idea, man.
Is going to go nuts. The number one plate in New South Wales recently sold for, Nathan, what was it, 3.4 million? I think roughly.
Oh, I think it was more than that. I think we cracked 10 for the most expensive.
There you go. No number plate, single digit number plate in New South Wales would sell for anything less than 1.2 or 1.5 million. That's just a fact.
I love this.
Now, in terms of double digit plates, no number plate would sell for, I'm telling you, I've done my research, no number plate would sell for less than 350,000, maybe 300,000 cap. No triple digit plate will sell for anything less than 60,000. But my whole bet here is that prices will skyrocket because it is an ego play. It is the most luxurious thing to hold. And it's a complete wanky kind of
You know what you do?
Yeah.
You know, it's a very brief sidetrack. We've been in business together since we dropped out of uni. We love bouncing off each other. Well,
one of us dropped out of uni.
Oh well, we both got degrees eventually, but we kind of wanted to start business beforehand. Anyway, yeah. Jacko's been a very good visionary. We always bounce off each other. I think this is a fantastic idea, and what just popped into my mind was, to execute something like this, you execute it by tokenizing it. So if you're the owner of the number 55 plate and it's worth, let's just say, $1 million, you call up John Doe.
Nice.
And you go, look, mate, your number plate's worth $1 million. We can actually peg it to X currency, which we can issue tokens for, and a proportion of people, and then obviously have to be built out on a website. Like you'd make it, this is the fund. It's like that art trading, tokenized art. It's essentially the same thing. They've tokenized art, and if that's removed from NFTs, by the way, it's actual physical art that you can invest in and have a portfolio in, but you don't have the art piece yourself. So it's very similar to that, but you do it through tokenization, and the person that you contact would go, okay, well, I'm willing to allot half the worth of the actual license plate to being tokenized that you come to an agreement with. And then on the website or the marketplace that you create, you'd have people come in and buy license plates. Yeah, it's like shares. Like buy 50. I want $50,000 worth of the 55 plate. And as it starts to go up, you can cash out your crypto straight away. Instead of doing it like shares, why not do it in a tokenized manner?
Yeah, you could make it you could definitely marketplace it for sure. But I think that's cool too. But if we're going bland, my way would be bland initially, at least. I'm telling you, the date is 12th September. It's 10:07 a.m. I'm telling you, the prices of number plates in the next decade, and let's leave it at New South Wales, one of the ego capitals of the world, Sydney. The prices of single-digit, double-digit, triple-digit number plates will not be lower in the next 5 years. It will certainly not be lower in the next 10 years. The only threat being if number plates aren't around, but I deem that to be very low. Let's use number 55. The 55 number plate today, if we called up John Doe, the owner, let's call it $1 million, which I think actually might be quite accurate. If you bought that plate today for $1 million, or let's say 700,000.
Oh, you're saying you front up the money and buy them.
Oh, you raise money for a fund. Say you raise $50 million for a fund to buy up a lot of the number plates in Sydney. I'm telling you, the price growth of these plates is going to grow because there's more money floating around in Sydney than ever before. That trend's going to continue. There's more ego floating around in Sydney than ever before. That trend's going to continue. And single-digit, double-digit, triple-digit number plates are an accurate representation of the ego level and the capital level in cities. So Number plate fund. If anyone wants to take it and run with it, just tap me on the shoulder because I might give you a few dollars.
It's a cracker idea. But do you think there's more friction that path versus the path of, hey mate, your thing's worth $1 million. Why don't you make even more money and we tokenize half of it and you can just cash out portions whenever you want? It's basically, for them it would be passive income weekly as the wealth continues to grow, instead of having no accessibility to liquidation unless you physically sell it. So there'd be no resistance on that version. Whereas if you go out with a fund, you got to raise the money first, then you've got to onboard people, which would be tough. Then you got to upfront you got to negotiate to buy the fucker.
Oh, it'd be a painful process. And by the way, most of those phone calls, you'd be like a real estate agent. You'd be getting hung up on left, right, and center. But you would get. And by the way, a lot of heritage plates. Now I'm getting boring, but a lot of heritage plates have been in families for a very long time. Yeah. We're talking like the first police commissioner of New South Wales got given the 6, 7, and 8 plate. Let's say. Well, that family, might desperately want to have a little $500,000 capital injection or more. So anyway, I think you could actually get somewhere with it.
I love it.
I don't have the time, energy, ability I might have, but I certainly don't have the time and energy to execute it. But again, if someone wants to take it and run with it, now maybe we'll do this Vox Populi, Vox D, Natho. So
I reckon we wrap it up, big fella. My hips fucking cramping up bad.
All right, let's do it.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm hanging on for dear life here, mate.
Oh, no. All right, so should we do an outro?
Yeah, we'll do an outro, and then I think we cut it because we've already gone an hour and 15.
Perfect. Or could I very quickly have a 1 minute on James Packer? I really wanted to say something.
Yeah, okay, go for it.
Sorry, mate. Just a quick one on James Packer, Nath. I saw the Spotlight interview this week.
Yeah, very, very sad.
Very sad, but look, a message to all Australians. I really think we need to put our arms around James Packer. He has been through the ringer. He has copped it more than almost anyone in this country. It is not easy, clearly, being in the position he's been in the shadow he's been in. It is time Australia embraces James Packer. Jimmy, get back to Sydney, mate. I think Australia actually will get around you. We love an underdog. And frankly, he's still a very likable guy. He's got charisma. He's got charm. I think there's a next chapter for James, and I think Australia can get around him. I really hope we can, because the Packer dynasty is an Australian folklore. So
definitely
wishing him all the best, and I hope there's a next chapter that's a really positive one in the Packer story.
Completely. And if somehow he sees this, I echo those sentiments completely. This all started, James, by me telling your old man stories, and they went viral and were so well received, and we wouldn't even have a platform if it wasn't for telling your father's stories. And we've told a few of you about you and your business dealings. Couldn't agree more. I think your health's most important, and being around the people that get around you the most is the way to go.
Yeah. Well, that might wrap it up, Nathan. You want to hit us with an outro?
Yes. Great episode. Honestly, that was it's only a second one, but geez, I absolutely loved that. I hope you guys did too. Hope you get a lot of value out of it as well. Again, make sure you follow us at the Instagram, Cashewnate, but more importantly, the Secret Sauce Sessions. That is where it's at. So all of the clips will be going out on Secret Sauce sessions, and a few of them on my page as well. I feel like this week is going to be really good. We're going to get a lot of juice out of this. Shoot through questions, DM me, DM us at Secret Sauce Sessions, and we'll integrate it into the show. This will just keep evolving week to week, but we're having fun. Like, this was just an absolute ball. So have a great week, guys, and a great weekend. Up the Chooks, if you're a Chook supporter, tomorrow night. And stay awake. That's my new motto. Stay awake. Do your own digging.
Go forth and prosper. Make some money.